So it seems like everybody on YouTube has made a video reacting or reviewing the Pinocchio remake, but I already did a video on the original Pinocchio, and everything that the original Pinocchio does right, the remake does wrong, so I feel like there's not that much to say about it anymore. But I still wanted to do something Disney related. I haven't done one of these in a while, so enjoy. 101 Dalmatians. So 101 Dalmatians is a Disney animated feature. It came out in 1961. And this starts, in my opinion, the slow decline of Disney animation. That really won't bounce back until The Little Mermaid and the Disney Renaissance. And what caused this decline was a shift in animation technology and technique from the clean painted lines to the kind of sketchy black lines of the Disney Dark Age that it's known for. And that's because of a few reasons. For one, the Xerox process was this new animation tool. It used Xerox copiers and printers. We could actually take the pencil drawings from the animators and scan them in and get an inked cell with black lines that used to be the pencil marks. So now you can paint on that, and it saves a lot of painstaking time with the line work. The problem with that, though, is that if the animators don't clean up their lines, their construction lines, you know, when they're blocking and working out the shapes, it shows in the final product, and it just looks kind of messy. You're probably thinking, why would they do such a thing? Why would they drastically decrease the standard of beauty in the animation? Well, there's actually a few reasons for this. For one, the last feature that they did, Sleeping Beauty, went way over budget. And if you want to know more details about that situation, I did a whole separate video all about that movie, so check that out. But another big reason was that Disneyland opened, and that was a hugely expensive undertaking that Walt went into a lot of debt to achieve. And yeah, it was a hit and people went, but when it opened, almost nothing worked. So he had to spend a lot more money on top of that to actually get things working and to fulfill his vision fully. And so that didn't leave a lot of money left for the animated features. And Walt didn't want to scrap animated features altogether because that's what he did. That's what he was known for. So he had to kind of make it work with the budget restraints that the studio had at the time. But another feature that doesn't often get talked about is that Walt Disney Studios, Buena Vista Productions, was opening up this whole new live action studio. It started with, I think, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, although there might have been a few more experimental pictures before that. But 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was a big win for the studio and proved that Walt Disney could produce live action movies as well as his animated features. And after that movie came out in the 50s, it was full steam ahead on more live action adaptations of classic literature. So all that being said, at this time in the studio, it was no longer cost effective to put in all that work and effort and hours of hand inking and hand painting every cell of animation. So with Xerox coming along, they figured it was the best compromise to do. And on top of that, the animators liked it because it took out the middleman. Their drawings went directly on the screen. There was no interpretation with the inking. It was literally what they drew on the screen. So, you know, that boosted some of their egos. But I gotta say, I just don't love this style of animation. It just looks so rushed and lazy and sloppy to me. And even though it doesn't bother me that much in this movie, the fact that this was the one that started this unfortunate process that made Disney animation look so cheap for decades to come, it's really hard for me to excuse it here, but it does work for the movie that they're going with. This is not a fairy tale story set in the old country or in the woods or in some cartoony land. This is actually a pretty contemporary story. It's set in like the late 50s. Television is ever present. People are driving cars. It's in urban London, and urban London, as depicted in this movie, looks dirty. It looks grimy. It feels lived in. And all the credit on that has to go to Ken Anderson, and he really pushed what a Disney movie could look like. And he gave it an almost abstract geometric flair, but with thick black lines outlining everything, where it almost looks like a storybook illustration. And Walt Disney absolutely hated this approach. He didn't like how messy it all looked. He didn't get the whole abstract feel of it. And I'm kind of inclined to agree with him. It does look messy and kind of unfinished at times, but for the world they're going for, I think it does work. And because of this choice, the messiness of the character animation actually doesn't look that bad here, because the character animation matches the background so well that it all kind of fits and you believe it and you're not too distracted by it. But even with Walt's objections, he wasn't really that involved in the production of this movie. He was more involved with some of his live action stuff and his theme park stuff. Like, he was busy around this time, and he didn't really have that much time to oversee every detail of his animated movies like he used to. But I think that's enough setup and background. Let's talk about what the story is. And the story is very simple. It's a story of two Dalmatians, Pongo and Perdita, and their pets, as they call them, Roger and Anita, fall in love. They get married. Pongo and Perdita also get married in a very beautiful church scene that actually uses the multi-plane camera. And that's another problem I have with this movie and a lot of movies going forward, is that they almost never use the multi-plane camera. I know that it was a very expensive piece of machinery. It took a long time to animate, but you can't deny the depth that you get when that thing is used right. And they use it once, and it's not surprisingly one of the most iconic shots in the movie is when they're at the church and you see Roger and Anita getting married in the background and Pongo and Perdita also getting married in the foreground. It's a very nice, well-composed shot, and they use the multi-plane camera, so I'm happy. But really, they should have used it more in some of the bigger city scenes. But anyway, Pongo and Perdita quickly get pregnant with 15 puppies, and she gives birth. And something I do like about this movie is that it's not afraid to go into some pretty dark and sad places, like when they're giving birth to the puppies and one of them is stillborn. And they didn't have to include this because the story really wouldn't be changed that much if the puppy were alive. But no, they show this sad little puppy that's dead, and Roger kind of rubs it alive, and it works, and he's alive. So you actually get this flow of emotions where you're really sad and it lingers on that for a little while, and then you get the joy of it coming back to life. It's just one of those little moments where I appreciated that I wasn't afraid to go into a kind of dark place, even though you know it's going to be a happy ending anyway. But before we can get too happy, the puppies, once they get their spots, get kidnapped by Cruella de Vil. And Cruella de Vil is one of the best animated Disney villains ever. She's part of the pantheon. There's a reason they always put her up next to Jafar and Ursula. But really, let's look at Cruella's motivation here. All she wants is to make fur coats out of a bunch of Dalmatians. That's such a simple motivation that it's kind of hilarious, that she's willing to go through all these lengths for fashion. And I think that's why she has so many fans, is because she is such a larger-than-life cartoon of a fashion mogul, to the point where she actually got a good live-action adaptation until they ruined that too. But I still love Cruella de Vil in this movie. She's loud, she's obnoxious, she's this frail old woman, kind of like Yzma in The Emperor's New Groove, but she's got this monster coat that probably weighs more than she does, and she just moves about Roger and Anita's house like she owns the place, smoking everywhere she goes. She's the epitome of that friend that you had in high school that really wasn't good for you, that was so obnoxious and over the top and rude that you couldn't really figure out why you were friends with them in the first place, but you just happened to be so. That's the relationship between Anita and Cruella in this movie, and it's a joy to watch. And of course, the song Cruella de Vil is a classic. I feel like I don't even need to say that because everybody knows how great this song is and just how creative the lyrics are and how it describes Cruella as this vampire bat, this beast, this spider. And don't think I didn't notice how when she's silhouetted in the doorway, her hair and head look like a spider in the web of the window in the door. That's just peak Disney animation. They knew what they were doing. So Cruella does manage to kidnap these puppies through her henchmen, Jasper and Horace. And Jasper and Horace, I always kind of liked. I thought that they were funny, but watch them again, they're actually kind of boring. I mean, they're animated well, and I love how one is so short and fat and the other is so lanky and tall. They work great together, and they are a perfect comedic duo, but there's something that's just so kind of generic and not that memorable about Jasper and Horace, and maybe it's their costumes. They're both in this very muted, generic henchman garb that really doesn't stand out that much from the background, so maybe that's it. At least Cruella has this very over-the-top, crazy design. But Jasper and Horace, while their proportions are cartoony, the way they talk and the way they dressed are just kind of underwhelming when I watch this again. But now it's up to the dogs to take some initiative and get their puppies back because the humans are just incompetent. And this is where the big thrust of the movie gets going, because this is really a suspense movie. Up until this point, Disney hasn't really tried to tackle Hitchcockian suspense because you're just waiting for the puppies to escape Hell Hall, which, yeah, that's a little bit on the nose, isn't it? Kind of like De Vil. But what this movie does pretty well is balance the suspense with the cartoony slapstick, because once Jasper and Horace catch wind of the puppies escaping and now they're looking for it, and there's this big prolonged chase sequence. Really, the whole second and third act is just one big chase sequence. Once the puppies are out of Hell Hall and they gotta get home, it's all a chase slash escape. And the slapstick here is fun mostly because of the way Jasper and Horace are animated. Even though they're not super memorable as characters, as bumbling buffoons, they are perfect, and their exaggerated proportions add to the comedy. But I will say there is a section between the escape from Hell Hall and right before Cruella notices the puppies covered in soot, where the movie really slows down and doesn't get that interesting. And I feel like it's necessary to tell the story, but there's just something with the pacing. It just grinds to a halt. And I think it's because they have escaped and you don't have that looming threat of Cruella or her henchmen on their immediate trail. But thankfully, once they disguise themselves as Labradors by rolling in some soot and they're trying to sneak right under the nose of Cruella, that's when the intensity kicks back on for me, because that's suspense, especially when the icicles start melting and they start dripping on some of the dogs and you see white spots on the black dog, which is actually a pretty clever reversal design-wise of the traditional Dalmatian, which is white with black spots. And Cruella notices this, and now the real final chase is on. All the puppies are loaded up on this truck to go home, and now Cruella is trying to run the driver off this windy road with her own car. And this car is so great, not just because it's animated well, and really all the vehicles in this are animated very well, very realistically, but still with personality. For instance, Jasper and Horace's truck kind of chugs along, so you know it's kind of rickety and not all on the up and up. And then you got the truck that the puppies are in, which is more stable, put together, solid, safe. And then you've got Cruella de Vil's car, which is just a character in itself. It's even got angry eyebrows on the headlights. Like, who thinks about that? It's brilliant. And I think we all know where this is going. Even if you don't remember much about 101 Dalmatians, you probably remember this car chase and the fact that Jasper and Horace's truck and Cruella de Vil's car collide and they fly off the road and the car is just a totaled wreck. And this is a bit of a tangent, but when I was a kid, me and my brother, we grew up on Disney cartoons and we pop into VHS tapes every so often. And I guess this movie left a bigger impression on us than I initially assumed, because whenever we play with Hot Wheels, and my brother would love to take apart the cars and pop the wheels off and even take the body off. And of course, when we were little, we didn't know how to put it back together. So when that happened, we would just call this wreck of a car Cruella de Vil's car, and we just play with it that way. So yeah, I guess that wreck really left an impression on us, especially because I don't remember watching 101 Dalmatians that much as a kid, but I guess I watched it enough for it to leave that impression. But then the movie wraps up in typical Disney fashion, where the 15 puppies are reunited with their family and the 84 other puppies that Cruella de Vil bought and paid for the express purpose of making coats. I can't get over just how basic a motivation that is, but it's played perfectly. And all the money that Roger has just raked in the meantime from publishing his Cruella de Vil song has made them super rich, where now they can afford to move out of the city, go to the country, and have a Dalmatian plantation for all these 101 Dalmatians. Isn't that lovely? And that's 101 Dalmatians. It's a cute story. It's got one super memorable antagonist, and you know, the other characters are fine, they're serviceable, but really Cruella de Vil is the star of this movie. If you don't have a super striking antagonist, this is just a cute dog movie of dogs doing their dog thing, kind of like Lady and the Tramp. And while I bring it up, there are times in this movie where it does feel a little derivative of Lady and the Tramp. Some of the animation is recycled again to save money, but also there's little cameos from Jacques and Peg and the Bulldog, and that really messes me up, because is this a shared universe or not? That's not the same time period. So are these just clever cameos, or was it the animators being so lazy and so tight-fisted with the budget that they thought they could just reuse these dog models and nobody would notice? I noticed. But even though they're both dog movies, Lady and the Tramp and 101 Dalmatians are really two very different movies when you actually take the time to sit down and watch it. Because Lady and the Tramp is a love story. It's a Romeo and Juliet story. And 101 Dalmatians is a suspense thriller movie that I really haven't seen Disney try to pull off before. And they actually do a pretty decent job. There are some pacing issues, sure. And am I a fan of the Xerox process animation? No. And does it look really cheap at times? Yeah, but it doesn't look as cheap as Disney's gonna get in the next few movies, so stay tuned for that. But for now, I turn it over to you guys. What did you think about 101 Dalmatians? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. As always, I'm Colby. This is my nerdy talk, and I'll see you in the next video.